Hello everyone again. It's been a while since I posted anything, but I wanted to do a quick little video on using overrides in workflows in Cloud Run jobs. This was introduced a while ago, but I just have never gotten around to do it. But it actually is really flexible. Prior to this, if you had like a Cloud Run job and you wanted to change or kind of like pass a parameter in to the actual container, you needed to change the environment variables and recompile the the Cloud Run, the definition. And I don't really want to do that. I'm too lazy. And now they've introduced container overrides, and what that allows you to do, as the name says, you can override a environment variable and pass that, and that actually gets passed on to the actual Cloud Run job when it gets invoked. So it's pretty useful for things like if you want to do like date ranges or some other sort of variable. So what I was going to cover today real quick is how we use it to go out to Elastic and get all of our billing data. Okay, and typically this billing data excuse me, gets updated every day, but sometimes there's a little bit of a lag. It might be like a 24 or 48 hours lag to get all the most up-to-date recent billing data across all of our orgs. We have, I think, 16 or 17 of them now using Elastic, and it's growing like every day. So we want to be able to go back and have a kind of a look back period to run to get that data, and then update and only either add or update existing data or new data. So here's a high level of what we have. Once again, we use workflows, Cloud Run jobs, BigQuery, and then we're relying more and more on data form, which is very similar to DBT if you use that, but it comes with BigQuery. It's built in, doesn't cost anything, and I have some other videos on that if you're interested. So I won't go through all the details here, but the override part for us comes into play right around here when we run the Cloud Run job. Right now I have a look back period. I think I maybe set it for 2 days. So when I call the Elastic API, I'll say, hey, go get me all the detailed billing data for, starting this date to the current date. And we obviously want to be able to have the flexibility to change that. Recently, we added a new org. They've been using Elastic for a while, for like the last, I think, 60 days or something. So we had to go back and do a backfill of the data. So that's pretty easy to do now. We just pass in a new invocation request with the appropriate JSON object, and we specify like 60 days instead of 2 days, like the default. So that's kind of the high level here, and let's go look at the actual definition here. So here's the workflows that we have. Let me pull up the Elastic one, and this is the workflow. If we look at the source, you can kind of see here that I have the ingest lookback days. So this is a parameter where in workflows we either get whatever's passed in, or we default it to 2 days, okay, 2 previous days. And then this is where we set the override part. So prior to this, like I said, we'd have to go change this environment variable and change it to 60 in this case, and then rerun our Cloud Run job. Now we just pass this in, so this is going to get invoked by default with 2. If we want to, we can change this to 60, okay? So this is the override part, how you define it in workflows here. Overrides, container overrides, and then the environment variables. And then inside of our code, our Python code, we just look for all these various environment variables. Now, if they're not set for some reason, we have sensible defaults. But if we go through this route, we can almost always guarantee that the environment variables are going to be set properly. So that's what this kind of looks like. And then here is the configuration of that job. Typically I'll have like the environment variable set here, but you can see in this case I don't have them set. So if somebody was to actually run this Cloud Run job by itself and execute it inside the Python code, we just default it to the last 2 days, so we still wouldn't get an error. So that's kind of nice. And then here's the execution history for the workflow. So if we look at this source here of the workflow, you can see we do a number of things. We submit the job, we pull, and we wait for the status, because when we submit this to Elastic, it takes a little bit of time to run this, to go through all the orgs, do some checks, and then afterwards, if everything's successful, we load that daily snapshot, I call it, into a temporary table, into a data set in BigQuery, and then we call a data form rollup. Now this data form rollup does a number of things. Looks like it only does one thing here, but it actually does a couple things. We have, it does the rollup and populates this daily billing cost data, and then at the same time we update the API key expiration with the org ID and when the API key is going to expire, because these API keys expire, and if we don't catch that, then we'll stop getting data. And then we have this all reported in Looker, so we have an analyst that kind of monitors this stuff and knows when the keys are getting close to being expired, and then renews those. So this expiration data actually comes back in the response header in this Elastic API key expiration. So we just put that into this temp table and then leverage that in this data form rollup to populate these. So we use merge queries, so it's either going to be an update in here or an insert, and then this is going to be the same thing, either an update or an insert. We don't do any deletion of data. Typically, if we have to do any deletion of data, we handle that via partition expirations. So all of these tables will have like an ingest date in them, and then we can just set the partition expiration and it'll automatically prune the data off, so we don't have to worry about dealing with that. Okay, so there's that. So then you see if we execute, if we click execute on this, you'll see that it just pulls up this. We normally don't do this, obviously. This is all handled through Cloud Scheduler, so we don't have to do this. But if we have to go in and rerun this for this ingest look back days, like here. So let's see if we do something like this, copy this, and then I want to do ingest look back days here. And this is JSON, so let's do 7 days. It's n+1, so it'll actually be 8 days. Let's do 6 here. So this is how we would do that. So we execute this, and then it kicks off. The job starts running. You can see it over here. This gets updated periodically, so now the job's running. It's waiting, and then calling the Elastic endpoint. Now if we go over here, and we look at the invoktions, you can see it running here, this execution ID. So that's what we just looked on here. And you can go get the logs. I don't really log a lot of stuff inside the workflows. Most of the logging I do is actually in the Cloud Run job. So you can see this job is running right now. And if we were to click on this and then we were to go look at the logs, sometimes it takes a little while for this stuff to get streamed. You can see right here that it's starting to, log the data. So it's going through all that stuff. And once that completes, then we would kick off the data form transformation. So yeah, so that's a quick little video on that. Pretty straightforward. We're starting to move pretty much anything that has like an environment variable that might need to be parameterized. I'm moving that over to these overrides, which is pretty nice here. Look like, so you remember we executed that and we said the ingest look back days were, whatever, 6, so n+1. So then if you look at this, this is the one ran successfully. We can go look at the log files here, see that. But then if you look at the configuration, you can see here where it set the that variable, that environment variable for us. So if you remember previously, we didn't have this set. So that just helps tie it up a little bit. So there you go. Bob's your uncle, still.